Hey, how you doing? You caught me working here.
He's a very impressive artist. For what he's done and has been capable of doing is super impressive.
Just incredible, the things that he can do. He taught me so much.
Here's the man. He's the man. He's the man.
Well,
But it's been fun. I've enjoyed every minute with Jess.
what I'm working on right now is this geometry for building a car alligator. And I did a wax one first. He's a little dark, but I had to figure out what this critter looked like in 3 dimension. And that's kind of the art process. I start off with an idea, and then I gotta work it through all the details, and then come up with something that is tangible. So, how you been? You know, I was raised in a very, very talented family. My dad was a musician. He was a jazz musician, and he'd played with the big bands in New York, and he came to California to work with NBC Radio. He was on the NBC orchestra and played all the best radio shows that NBC had back in the day, because he started playing music in the 30s in Texas, all over the world, really playing music. Wound up in New York, where my older brother was born, and then went to moved to California. He had started a family, so there was a reason for him not to go on the road. Growing a family, they decided they wanted to settle down. A good gig for that would have been studio work, and so NBC Radio was the ideal place. So they moved to California and started continuing to raise the family, and that's where I was born. I was born in Santa Monica, on the beach. Growing up, there was 7 in the family altogether, mom and dad and the 5 of us. And my brothers and I sort of came along 1, 2, 3 in the early years. Mom liked to dress us alike, and she was very artistic. She liked to build costumes and put us into parades and things like that. So my sister came along, and she was number 4. She really wanted a girl, and she really never got one until number 4 came along.
I did a lot of crazy, wild things with the 3 brothers. All I wanted to do as a child was run with my 3 big brothers. So I was just the nag. I would beg to do things with them, and my mom was like, some things I could, and then I'd come back injured,
And I had another younger brother after that, Ken.
Growing up as a kid, I was just the, snotty-nosed punk.
And my older brother, Wally, was just an extremely intelligent brother. He was my mentor. I just tagged along with him everywhere he went. A real genius. I don't know what his IQ was, but it was really up there in the clouds. Never got anything less than an A in school. It kind of worked against him later on in life. He became schizophrenic. And he was 16 years old, and he had a mental breakdown. There was stress in the family, and there was stress at school. And he had been playing football and got clipped in a football game. My other brother was Dooney. Actually, I named him Dooney. He was a junior, and mom and dad were trying to get me to say junior, 1 year, 4 months younger. So I was a little tyke. I couldn't say junior. So I came up with Dooney, and he had a band when he was in high school in Bishop, California, and they were good. They played in parades, and they played in dances and things like that. He loved to play. My first art appreciation was an award that I got at a juried art show, and I was in the 4th grade. And in the 5th grade, I was awarded another catch award from the same group. And that was when we lived in the Mojave Desert at Palmdale and Lancaster, California. I had been going to a school when I was in the 3rd grade and had my first art teacher kind of mentored me in what I was doing. She saw I had an unusual talent for a 3rd grader, that I could see and perspective things that other students at that age really didn't grasp onto. When I got really involved in theater and art, that was in high school. I loved my high school years. I loved my high school sweetheart. You know, she was a wonderful girl, and she went on to do some big things. I think she became a professor in university and has written books, and you know, she's a real go-getter. Oh, beautiful people in that high school. Such a talented high school. You know, it was stuck up in the middle of the high Sierras in a valley that was pretty famous for filmmaking. You know, for Hollywood, all the westerns were filmed up there. I mean, you name a western, and there's a part of it that's in the same area that where I was in high school. I had to wear a business suit and a business haircut, and you know, not get too into the hippie stuff. I never was a hippie. In fact, when all that was really strong, I was in the Marine Corps. I got drafted, and then became a combat engineer, bombs and booby traps. And then I volunteered because they were looking for a news correspondent in the public relations department of the Marine Corps. I got the job, and so I became a writer for the Marine Corps, and an illustrator, and a photographer. And I was published in magazines, the military magazines, Leatherneck, and the Navy Times. I had published works. High-ranking officers wanted to put you on their teams because the more they got written about, the more they got promoted. They're beautiful human beings. I'm so proud that Chip grew up to be a caring and wonderful father and family man, and the same way with Julie. Incredibly talented and warm people, and that's all a father can really want. They were products of my first marriage.
Well, Jess, I have memories of Jess and Mary Lou being together, being married. I have memories of this. And I want to say, I think I was maybe 3 when they divorced. I'm not sure what the terms were, but I know we did see him.
I would call Jess gentle. He's also a very gentle human being. And I think my mother pretty much crushed him. Because of my mother, I think he had, for his own soul, he felt like he needed to leave.
That first marriage just didn't quite work out, but that happens. Their mother and I were just married way too young. And I made some really stupid mistakes in trying to avoid the military draft by getting married when we just should have been dating. You know, Chip was born while I was in the Marine Corps. He's a Virginian, actually. He was born in Virginia. Everything was pretty fine in our family for a number of years, but then it got strained. I was trying to promote my wife as an entertainer. I had my musical background and my management capabilities and all that, and that was another mistake I had made. But you know what? She was able to go into her career and you know was happy with that. It's just that it was not something that was meant for us, you know, to stay married. I always tried to make the kids, when they were with me, as happy as I could, as entertained as I could. And we tried to do a lot of things, and we experienced a lot together. And even, you know, later on in their lives, when I could hire them to help out with some of the crazy projects I was on, they came and they volunteered. The love we have for each other is real solid. My sculptures at that time, the 1970s animal sculptures, the endangered wildlife sculptures, all those sculptures were all over California. They were being sold everywhere, theme parks, gift shops, galleries, art galleries. And there was one theme park that carried my work, and that was Knott's Berry Farm. That presented an opportunity to go to another sculpture level.
Knott's Berry Farm. Across another time zone into the 18th century, and you are witness to the colorful pageant of the American Revolution. Knott's Berry Farm's a great adventure for the entire family.
Well, you know, the very first big article was in Los Angeles Times. I became a corporate executive for a title insurance company. I was in marketing and sales and public relations. I was pretty well known in Los Angeles in the real estate industry as being the marketing director for First American Title for Los Angeles. So I had 13 representatives, public relations people working in my department. So we were all over the place. I was always doing artwork on the side, and I was always sculpturing something, or I was always drawing cartoons or making gift cards. I just had my hands in art and writing, and I was doing that while I was working, selling title insurance, meeting real estate brokers and lawyers and bankers, and anybody had to, a chance to buy a title or a title search. And it was just not a good fit for me. So I left that business and started sculpturing. I did a few sculpture projects for some hobby companies. And then I got an invite. I met Rosemary Luxton, who was a mineral dealer. She had a couple of mineral mines, and she wanted to put sculptures on her minerals. And so she wanted silver sculptures. And so I interviewed with her, and I showed her some of my projects. And so she said, yeah, you'd be a great fit for us. So we collaborated on this, and then I started sculpturing hundreds of designs that became produced in silver. Rosemary distributed them. She sponsored me as an artist. I went to art shows and galleries, and we did personal appearances and signed autographs and all that good stuff. There was other articles written to promote the pieces. They were sold at Neiman Marcus and Gump's Jewelry, and they were sold at the Smithsonian gift shop at the Natural History Museum. And they were endangered wildlife animals in a series of limited edition sculptures. So every time one of my finished pieces was sold, I would get a royalty for that piece. The price of metal increased, the price of labor increased, the price of minerals increased, and she could no longer fit the niche that she was trying to fit in the gift in the gallery. And so her advisor wanted her to get out of the art business and get into the gold business. So she became a gold investor and no longer an art investor. So we kind of faded down from that. So I've always been attached to my early work in that way. After all, I did design them, I did create them, even though they were cast at different foundries. I began casting the silvers myself later on. A company in Southern California, Starlight Originals, who right now are producing larger artwork sculptures. And they didn't really push my work or me as an artist. They had their own artists they wanted to work with. I dated for a while. I kind of played the scene a little bit between marriages. But when I met Carol, I knew there was something different about her that I really liked. I felt so comfortable with her. She supported me and was very involved in what I was doing and so excited about it. We created a marriage where I would support her in anything she wanted to do, and I wasn't going to try to control anything she did, and vice versa, and so we really enjoyed each other as friends and really soulmates.
She's always calm and mellow, a lot like Jess. My boys always thought of Carol and Jess as the cool Aunt and Uncle.
They got married, moved into a house. I don't know how long they lived there, maybe like a year, and then moved to Texas. My first job, once we moved to Texas,
I went to work for an ad agency. Because of my capabilities in three-dimensional constructions, I was put into the ad agency display division. I was building trade show booths for ad agency. In Texas, it was just wide open, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for this type of work. And so I decided to go out on my own and create theme products for all kinds of businesses. So I did. I was working with Melvin Simon Malls, building theme programs for them, three-dimensional things, like banners and signs and holiday animated decorations and, just anything I could get my hands on. And then word got out around Dallas and Fort Worth that here's this guy that can build sets and things. So this young filmmaker, he started working with me. He wanted me to be able to help build sets and work as a set designer. It was kind of fun because we had to build a film in the 1930s in East Texas. So it was a location film. And so I had to go make everything look like it was 1930s.
And Jess came in to be our art director, designing the individual sets and helping to decorate them. And that's how I first met Jess, literally the first day that he showed up for work. For our budget, I was lucky because I had come in from LA, where I had become friends with Ned Beatty. So Ned was very helpful in getting the project actually together, and it helped us get the cast that we got.
That was a fun project. It's where I met Irene Corey, who actually is the designer of the Barney costume. She was my production designer on the show, and I was her art director. And we got along just fine. And the movie was finished and it was put out into the theaters locally. So we got to see the film, and then all of a sudden it went dead.
You get a woman like that, and you got to do everything you can think of to keep a hold of her.
How do anything?
The passage from cradle to grave is meant for sharing it all.
I love you, Jessie Monroe.
I love you, Eddie.
The Passage, with Brian Keefe, Ned Beatty, Alexandra Paul. The Passage, a journey through love.
There was a traveling Chinese children's art exhibit that I got involved with when I was with an ad agency. I was pretty busy around Dallas, being a freelancer, set builder. My sets were not expensive. I kept my costs down. I used materials. I built the sets myself with my team. We didn't have a big overhead. I built out of my garage. I could almost demand and beat anybody's bids on a project at the time. So there's a lot of word of mouth, and I was really pretty busy. I was called in to become an art director for JFK movie at the exact same time with Oliver Stone. And I thought, well, that might be something real prestigious. The producers, Cheryl Leach and Kathy Parker, had seen me in the studio there in Allen working with other corporations, because I was a freelance set designer, and I would build things for corporations, TV shows, and at the time there was satellite television, and so they needed sets. They needed talking head sets, they needed game show sets. So they made me the proposal. Would you come in and help us build 3 videos? I'll think about it. I went over and I interviewed, and I was on my 3rd call back to become an art director when Kathy Parker called me and said, well, what do you think, Jess? You going to come in on the Barney project here and build us some stuff? And so I thought to myself, well, okay, you could work for a big movie producer and you could kill yourself for 6 weeks and then you're done. Or I could work for maybe 6 months on 3 kid shows. That might be kind of fun, working for a kid show.
Can't go to a baseball game empty-handed.
Oh, look at that, Barney! Do you know the Peanut Butter song?
I knew nothing about Barney the dinosaur and his popularity. I soon learned, because once we started building and working with them, and I could see the popularity and what Cheryl Leach and Kathy Parker had been doing marketing-wise, I said, wow, this thing's got legs.
So our family business had just built a video studio, and I came up with this idea to do a video series and it was the perfect idea at the perfect time for our company's needs.
He worked on the first Barney Christmas show, and that was my first show. Younger kids, the Barney age kids still really like that.
We built like a stairway and a fireplace and that kind of thing. So yeah, that I believe that was the very first one.
I don't think any of us really knew. I mean, we knew what was happening with the children and the mothers and the families that were buying the videos, the first 3 videos, and how they exploded. So, there was always a hope that, it might move into something. It was fun work, and I was getting paid. So, hey, let's just do this, have fun, and be as creative as we can, and let's just see where it goes. And sure enough, the story about PBS picking it up was just remarkable.
Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination, and when he's tall, he's what we call a dinosaur sensation.
One of the reasons why PBS approached us was that Barney was already a success, and they wanted Barney to help boost their ratings and fill out their preschool block. Suddenly, Barney was accessible to 93% of all American homes.
Barney!
Here I am, Min.
Min? My name isn't Min.
It's not. Gee, let me look real close. You've got Min's eyes, and that sure looks like Min's nose. And I think I see Min's smile coming out. Yep, you're Min, all right.
When I became Barney, I knew that kids were more spiritually connected than we are. So I had to connect with them on a whole different level.
Because it was a kids show, we worked pretty much 8 to 5 every day. You couldn't work the kids longer because of child labor laws. I was out the door at 5 typically.
We always entertained people when they came into the art department. The kids used to like to come in, see what we were doing. Everybody liked to see what was coming up because we always had props in advance of the show. Say, well, what are you working on now? Well, 2 shows from now, we're going to be doing this and this and this. So, yeah, we always had to stay ahead of things. Now, a lot of times, things went on the set that were still wet, dripping in paint, but it was warm enough out there, they dried real quickly. But you have a schedule, and so we were always forced to get things done in time with a limited amount of people. We didn't have a lot of people at first, and so everybody pitched in. All the art department jumped in to make things happen. And we had some wonderful people. Well, the 2 main art directors were Ray Henry and Elizabeth Velton. Her job was to keep the sets in order, do the set dressings, and make sure that everything was ready to shoot. He didn't have the title art director, but he was a genius when it came to building things, and that was Charles Bailey, who was our construction head. There was Lisa Albertson, who had all the children's wardrobe and costumes. Her department helped with the dino costumes. And then eventually we built a dino costume department, and Ray Henry ran that. And so when they said, well, we need a puppet, Ricky Raccoon, yeah, I could do that. So we picked up a raccoon puppet. I think it was a commercial one. We didn't build that one. So we did Ricky, and they liked it. Yeah, I was Clarence, frog on the log, and then it just kept growing.
Well, this is Rainbow Beer. Just wanted to prove I was really here and really did this for the glory, not for the money. It was for the glory.
I started writing scripts, but sometime after that is when they actually started building the sets and getting the studio ready to go. And that would have been when I really met Jess, just coming in and seeing how the work was coming along and just developing a very good, friendly relationship with him, and just kind of in awe of what he and his crew were able to do.
Just incredible with all the stuff that he had built. The early Barney stuff, you build walls, you bring things in, it's built, it's carpentry work. You just think there's guys in town that can do this. Well, it wasn't until we were doing the series and we started seeing all the props that he was building. In other words, these custom sculptures that he was building, you just assume maybe he was buying those someplace, but it was like, no, these start off as a block of foam and then get sculpted shaved, cleaned, painted, and created.
He's built in so many. I mean, if you'll notice these tree limbs here, they're all attached to individual lines, and they can be lowered or raised to a particular angle for shots we're doing. So each of them are individually adjustable.
They grew right there.
That's right. Yeah, and you guys were to look at those, Jess, you won't brag on yourself, so I'll do it for you. If you'll look at those close up, those leaves are all individually handmade. There's a little piece of wire glued to every one of them, hand painted, wound together, and then wound on those branches.
I pulled all the bells and whistles that I knew of and laid it into that show. I think those first 2 years show that. I remember the first time I used matte paintings that I did for Magical Musical Adventure, where they bounced off to a castle. That was a really cute video, and the production crew were pretty amazed at what we were able to pull off. Oh yeah, I was building a palm tree for the ship. We did some special effects filming on that. Of course, a big wave came along and threw the ship on top of the island, and it landed in the trees.
Hello! 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 My word. Are you a dinosaur, sir?
That's right.
Excellent! Woo, what a relief! I thought I was seeing things. This island heat can do that, you know.
We were outdoors in the courtyard of the school where the platform was. There was a hole in the platform, and there was a suitcase with a hole in the bottom of the suitcase, and the fish came out of the suitcase, the talking fish. So that was the story about the talking fish that she told in the story. But then in between takes, I was joking with her all the time. So I think maybe it was during the take or after the take, popped this cigar in the fish's mouth and went up there, and I made out like I was Groucho Marx with the cigar, you know.
We were trying to get a costume made in London, and so we would go over there for fittings. And of course, sometimes we would go for an appearance and do some things, and Jess would come along, and then after everybody's gone, then Jess and I would go to the Henson Studios to try to get the costumes made and everything. Jess and I kind of bonded even more like brothers because we spent a lot of time together on those trips, me, him, and Ray Henry. So we'd go out to dinner together, and sometimes we'd meet in a hotel lobby and have breakfast before we would go over to the studio. So it was a great bond.
While I was on Barney, a lot of people were approaching me to help them with their projects. I was thinking at the time that, you know what, if I could just take on an advisory role with Barney, I could do other projects. I was convinced of that I could work on other things. Well, the producers of Barney thought otherwise, that no, you had to be 100% with the program. So I decided that I was going to take the opportunities that were being offered to me, not just because of the better money, that was something to consider, but also my fine art career and trying to do other things that were specifically fine art oriented. And so I did get out and I started doing some other projects and started traveling.
Contributing to the whole Barney atmosphere and the vibe and the whole, you know, everything about it being inclusive and loving and everything. And Jess was part of that. I mean, the producers were really good at hiring people who fit that kind of atmosphere, understood the philosophy, understood the tone of the show and the character and what we were all about. And Jess was really a great part of that.
Whenever we would be on set and about to film, they would bring in to the kids like their artwork. I just remember how adorable the art that they brought us that we did. He was able to create a really warm, fun, colorful environment.
Yes! It's terrific. It'll be a hot item next Halloween. Absolutely.
I think I knew Jess before Barney, as I recall. We, over the years, did a couple of projects together, and most memorably was a project that we did called Scrooge and Marley. A little TV movie that I wrote and directed, and Jess was the production designer on. So they wanted to do a film based on the book. So I proposed an idea of taking the concepts that are in the book and putting them into a dramatic film. And I've always loved A Christmas Carol. And so I said, why don't we do our own version of A Christmas Carol, in which we build all these concepts into a revisualized idea of A Christmas Carol. They loved it, and so we did. And I hired Jess, and Jess and I spent quite a bit of time together. One of my favorite things Jess did when we were doing Scrooge and Marley is I had a scene in the book. Scrooge goes to Marley's funeral. So I decided to stage that funeral. And so to do that, Jess built this huge cemetery, the top of a cemetery, it was like on a hill, and we had this old gnarly tree, and there was a grave where they were going to bring the coffin in and drop it in the grave, and it's all on a rise, and we pumped the whole place full of fog. And then Jess hung to do snow. We would do chicken wire baskets that you'd hang above the set full of plastic pieces, and so the grips would shake the basket, and that's how you get the snow falling in the scene. Jess built that, but he also built one of my favorite things is a little miniature graveyard, so that we could do a master shot of going through the open gate. We'd go through that gate and you'd see all the tombstones and all that sort of thing. And we would go up toward that hill. And as we progressed toward that hill where they're going to bury Marley, then I would dissolve to the full set as they came up on that set hill, and with the coffin to drop him in the ground. As Jess was building that model set, we thought it'd be funny to put our names on the tombstones.
Merry Christmas, everyone! Merry Christmas, Your Honor! Merry Christmas, Bailiff! And Merry Christmas to you! And to you!
Mr. Scrooge, it is highly rude to keep this court waiting.
Oh, I'm aware of that, Your Honor, and I ask your forgiveness.
Very well, let's get on with it.
Dick Leach, the executive producer of Lyric, he thought, well, Jess could work on those for me. So, and he did. He hired me for a lot of projects. I really loved working with him. But some of these very rich people that I happened to get calls from were, let's just say, very prominent Americans, very wealthy Americans, and they had projects they wanted done. And this was before Barney and after Barney, actually. But the majority of that work occurred afterwards. I had worked on some ranches all around Texas, big wealthy families that wanted projects, art projects for their museums, most of them being big game hunters. The Pavella family, which I love, and became good friends with them. Dick and Mary were wonderful, generous people. They brought me in, and I worked for them for 6 years.
I am a painter, but not a realistic painter, and that was not going to be my gig. He came to paint these big scenic paintings for every continent where Mary and Dick Cabela had shot big game animals, and those animals were going to be taxidermied and put in front of these displays. So Jess showed up to paint those, and he was looking for studio assistants. Somebody suggested my son come paint for him, and so he did. He was at college, and when he came home, he started painting for him. And Jess and I became coffee shop buddies.
I've had a lot of apprentices over the years that I've mentored, and I've always felt that it was my responsibility as an older artist to bring in younger, talented ones and show them that, there's possibilities for your talent.
He was working on the Cabela's mansion in Sidney, Nebraska, and he had reached out to, I think, a few different artists and art teachers in Sidney, basically looking for artists to help him with the murals. One of our family friends was one of the people he had talked to, and she mentioned my name, and I took in some art and showed him, and he brought me on.
That made such an impact on both of us too. We were just, a couple punk skateboarders, just bumming around and building cars and doing cool stuff, but like he kind of popped in at like the most perfect time for us, and for the town, honestly. He I don't know who shows up to a town and changes it that much.
I worked for the corporation. I was a catalog art director. He was meticulous about his research, and then his eye for detail once he got his research done, and his eye for design to really make it really extraordinary.
We really worked our tails off for him. All the teams. And these are big artists, big art teams, famous artists from around the country. And I was just so fortunate to be included in that group, And I did some of my best work there. And I hope someday people will be able to see it and experience it.
I met him probably while he was building sets for Waiting for Santa, just to get an idea of, how Christmassy this was going to be, what is the North Pole, what is, what's the house, those kinds of things. And the guy just oozed competence. Sometimes you meet somebody and you understand they're kind of feeling their way on this. They'll be good, they'll be fine, but it's going to take a minute. That was not Jess. Jess was so competent. He'd worked on so many sets and so many, things that weren't sets, muraling and art and, building little things and building big things and stuff, that he knew what was going to work, what was within the budget, and what the grand scheme of things was. Meeting Jess was like joining a football team and finding out this is the NFL. We're on a team here. There's some good folks. So it built my confidence, and what he did impacted my music, because my music had to match his look.
It sticks to your hair. Whenever I see you, I'm thinking of there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the song is titled Single.
Well, in 1980, I had a hardware store in North Richland Hills, and he moved into the neighborhood a year or two later, I think. I'm not sure the exact time. We got involved with Barney and Friends and started buying some of the products for his sets he was building.
So I met Kerry. He had a garden center, and we hit it off.
He keeps the history of the Barney plushes alive, and he's got a toy repair organization that he has. I think it's a nonprofit, and they repair things like Barney plushes, and they get them to folks who deserve them. So he's still doing great stuff.
When you look at a lot of the work that he's done, especially with his sculptures and the work that he did on Barney, of course, I think it's all from a place of, it seems like joy to me when I look at, the nature sculptures that he's done, all the different, murals and things. I think you can see that he enjoys nature, he enjoys culture, and he's just joyful about it, I think.
The things that he can come up with and the talent that he possesses are just mind-blowing to me, because I'd never been around anybody like that. He could, paint a picture of anything and it looked like a photograph. And I'm just thinking, I go nail two boards together and stand back and look and say, hey, that looks pretty cool, and he's sitting here painting artwork that could be sold in an art gallery,
Artists like myself, centuries ago, were hired by the church. I have done films for the churches, not any particular faith, but I've done work for Protestant churches and Catholic churches and, God knows what. But if a freelancer goes where he can get a job, and so I've traveled around the country making films for different churches. But when it came to the backdrops and the paintings for these museums, that was a challenge, because I had to make these things these backings looked so dimensional that you didn't know where the land in the foreground ended, where the back began. That was the tricks I learned. Everybody was asking for them. So when I left that world, it was because of Carol. Carol developed Alzheimer's, and I was traveling around the country painting. And I had to drop a couple of requests because I knew I had to come home and take care of Carol, because she had reached a point where she was beginning to get lost driving. She was an excellent driver, and she could locate herself anywhere. But that was kind of the first sign. And I'd seen that sign before. In fact, Carol and I both experienced it with her mother, because her mother also had Alzheimer's, and Carol was her mother's caregiver. Terrible, destructive disease. I think there's a lot of research that could be done. I think they're missing the boat, not researching into genetics and getting some sort of genetic alteration of those genes. Because in her family, in our family, it's genetic, because there's just a ton of her relatives that had to suffer through Alzheimer's and experience it. That's something that we're dealing with right now, and Carol's still with me, and she'll make her decision when she's ready to move on, and I've accepted that, and decided that we're going to, in her memory, carry on.
Jess loved Carol so much, and she really loved him too, and they had a great relationship together as a husband and wife, and they traveled, and I know they had a good time. He is such a kind person as well. Like, he's a great man, very loving, loves Carol so dearly, and has just taken great care of her.
We would go to East Texas. We would drive out Monday morning, paint all day, stay the night, paint all day, and then drive home to Dallas so he could spend a day with her. And then Thursday morning, we'd drive back to East Texas, stay the night, and then come back on Friday evening. And, it's like, Jess, chances are, Carol's not getting better. We're not going to be able to leave her alone, because, she would call him in the middle of the day, and he would leave notes all over the house that Ray and I will be back, whatever day or whatever time.
I've wanted to see the world as much as possible, and Carol, being that her career was with the airlines, she was able to take us places together. That was her job. She was a ticket agent, and so all the other airlines would solicit her for talking about the airlines when the opportunity could come up, and so they gave her free flights, free tickets to go places. After we were married, about 10 minutes, she said, I got a trip lined up for us to go to Hawaii. And I went, what? She was a wonderful person, and we got along so well. She just had that kind of personality. Being working in the airlines as long as she did, she could size up people like that.
What you do, you chop them up. Oh, nice sweet potatoes.
There were projects that really never thought I would ever create, but as time has gone past with what's happening with Carol, I realized that there's going to be a point in my life where I've got to start over. There'll be a point when I need to move into something to continue in a creative process. This all started back when Dennis G. Shazer and his wife Leslie and Carol and I were hanging around together, going places, and we went to New Orleans, NOLA, and went to the jazz festival down there in Louisiana in the springtime. And they had this dish. It was an etouffee that was made from crawdads and alligator meat, and it was just delicious. So after the fest was over, there was still a lot of beer around. So we were drinking beer, and I was fantasizing, or I was drunk as a skunk, I don't know. But I was thinking about this alligator thing that I ate. And I said, what if there was some kind of creature that looked like an alligator, and then I thought of a story for it. So I made up this little ribald tale of the alligator, and it's kind of maybe it's more risque than it is today because I've re-edited it a couple times. So I built this show in my head around it, this production, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to give that a go and see what happens. So I created a Facebook site called Crawligator on Facebook, the Crawligators, and then I also since then have it on the World Wide Web, YouTube. It's carrying the music. In the long run, we hope television, comedy, sitcom, and we've got 3 scripts written for it. I've got a lot of my friends from the production days standing in the wings, chomping at the bit to help participate with getting this thing launched. It's got pretty good legs right now. Ray Henry's going to be working on the puppets with me. Ray's always been a great puppet builder and a puppet master, so he's going to take that. And really, right now, it's the 2 of us pulling it together. They're all going to have personalities, and we're going to have human actors interacting with the puppet actors. And we've got these great stories about the wetlands in Louisiana and the swamps. And the serious side of this production is going to try to bring attention to the destruction of Americans' wetlands. I'm just so proud of these 2 kids that have now produced 6 grandchildren, and we're about to have 6 great-grandchildren. There's 3 on the way right now.
I would say growing up, as a kid, the number one thing I always thought about my grandpa doing was Barney and the other things that involve puppetry or some of the work he was doing kind of online. I went over to his house when I was a little kid and we worked on some art projects in his backyard, and there's a picture of me working on, I think, with him on his koi pond that's in his backyard. So I just remember as a little kid, the thing that I associated art and my grandfather with: fun, creative, and a lot of it was, obviously not all of his artwork was for kids, but a lot of it was, a lot of it was very playful. And I liked that, especially being 5, 6, 7 years old. I was like, wow, my grandpa's making all this fun stuff. My mom went and visited Carol and Jess, and she told me that her medical situation was going downhill, and I was pretty upset to hear that. And I said, I'm gonna figure out how to get down there. I want to go visit. We've got little kids. My wife's pregnant, and so I was trying to figure out, okay, how's this going to work? Well, there was a work conference going on. I made sure that my connecting flight went through Dallas, and my thought was, okay, if I have at all the ability to, I'm going to delay my flight back home from Dallas, which is what I did. And I went and visited them recently for 2 days. So I got to spend some time with Carol and spend some time with Jess and see some of the projects he's working on. Gosh, I think it was back in 2016, a friend of mine and myself started working on a board game. And that went through several iterations. And we're actually, me and another friend, who actually is an artist, are actually trying to get that published. So we have found a publisher, and we're working kind of in the last steps of getting a board game published.
It's interesting. We were talking about my mom and dad and how talented they were, and how I just think about how the genetics work in families, how things are passed on. And, they skip generations sometimes. And my dad was just one hell of a musician, but I wasn't. I didn't get those genes. Yet my son, Chip, became a musician. My daughter, super art talented, but she went into education, and Julie is a super caring educator. She took on the task for training students that were from broken homes or had disabilities. She actually was a homeschooler to make sure they were getting the criteria they needed. So super kids. Now, that was the first generation, the grandkids. Oh man, what a talented bunch. We've got artists, musicians, engineers, technical people, brokers, you name it. And then we've got another generation coming along now. And I'm really curious to see what comes from all the great grandbabies. My other brother was Dooney. Actually, I named him Dooney. He was a junior, and Mom and Dad were trying to get me to say junior, 1 year, 4 months younger. So I was a little tyke. I couldn't say junior. So I came up with Dooney. And he had a band when he was in high school in Bishop, California. And they were good. They played in parades and they played in dances and things like that. He loved to play. So that was what he was going to do. He was going to become a nightclub owner, and they were going to have bands and, do the whole 9 yards. And I think he was 19. He was in the military. He was drafted into the Army the same time I was drafted into the Marine Corps. He was coming home to get married before he went to Vietnam. He had a high school sweetheart that he was going to marry, and she was waiting at home for him. I had flown out from the Marine Corps, where I was stationed in North Carolina, and I was waiting for him. We were going to have the big wedding, and all the family was there and everything, and he just didn't show up. So we got to worrying. After about 2 or 3 hours, I got on the phone and I started calling around to all of the towns and police stations that were from here to Texas, or from California to Texas. It was at night. He had his best man with him. He was a friend that he had met in the Army. There was a section of the desert outside of Indio, California, where there were cul-de-sacs that ran under the roadway, but they didn't dig them down. They had bridges over each cul-de-sac. So at night, you couldn't see anybody coming towards you. It was just one of those things. You would pull out to pass a car or something, and it looked fine. And that was the problem. He met a RV at the top of one of those cul-de-sacs, and they were instant. Everyone was killed. It was a terrible accident. My older brother, Wally, was just an extremely intelligent brother. He was my mentor. I mean, I just tagged along with him everywhere he went. We just lost him last year, or when the COVID hit. He was in a nursing home, and it took him out. I would like to thank all of those people that over the years helped me with my art career. Some of them when I was very young, and gosh, I wish I could just remember everyone's name, but that was 75 years ago. But here's a nice list of those that I do remember. These people became such a big part of my life. I just want to remember them because they're no longer with us. Thank you. Oh gosh, legacy. Well,
I think he's got a legacy in two ways. One is the people that were impacted by what he invented, the characters, the way they moved, the backgrounds, the colors, the placement, the care that he had that you see on the screen. The school was not a scary place. It was a friendly place. Jess made it friendly. And so there's this, what came through the screen and how that impacted people. His other legacy is, crew and other peers who look at that and go, how did he do that with the time and budget that he had?
I think he will definitely be remembered as an artist. Jess is the artistic father that I never had. You know, my dad could not draw a stick figure if you put a gun to his head, even now.
Everything Jess did was just fun, and it came across really fun on camera, and it was just things that kids really liked.
This is kind of a tedious journey he's on right now, but he's making the best of it, you know, as taking care of Carol and working on Crawligators with some of his old buddies from Barney. It's just, what else can he dream up?
I think Barney will probably be his legacy. You know, he's done some interesting things that people recognize but wouldn't know as his.
Getting to know some of the things that I've done in my life might be an inspiration, or just to, you know, keep at it. Just follow your dreams and follow your heart and work your hardest. There will be doors opening for you as an artist, as a talented person, and, you know, in any field. When those times happen, then stick your neck out. Go ahead, try it, but be cautious and go slowly. But yeah, there'll be those times, and everyone should take advantage of that.
Oh, don't play with your fly. Come on now. This is a family show here.